The refugee camp on Station Kepler 442 smelled of recycled air and desperation. Assel had seen worse during the war, but the eyes of the children always got to him, especially the alien ones with their bioluminescent skin dimming from malnutrition. He ladled another portion of protein synth into a bowl, ignoring the inventory warnings flashing on his neural implant. Corporate would dock his pay again, but what else was new? The two Valorian children in front of him, their scales turning gray from hunger, needed it more than his landlord needed rent. "Here," Assel said gently, kneeling to their height. Their 6 eyes blinked in unison, scanning him for threat. "It's safe." Human food. Universal proteins. The older one, barely the size of a human toddler but probably decades old by Valorian aging, took the bowl with trembling claws. They'd been abandoned 3 cycles ago when their guardianship never returned from the front lines. Story old as war itself, Assel had been a combat medic before the peacetime downsizing turned him into a station food service worker. The transition had been jarring, from saving lives to serving reconstituted meals to travelers who barely looked at him. But moments like these reminded him why he'd chosen medicine in the first place. Life was life, regardless of how many limbs or eyes it came with. "You're going to get fired," his supervisor's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Again." "Add it to my tab," Assel muttered, watching the Valorian children eat. Their bioluminescence was already brightening. A good sign. He didn't notice the woman watching him from the shadows of the docking bay entrance. He'd been too focused on the dozen other refugee children lining up, their various species creating a rainbow of desperate hope. Humans, Alterans, Kylix, even a young Dranathi whose crystalline structure was showing stress fractures. For the next hour, Assel worked through his entire shift's inventory and half of tomorrow's. He'd face consequences, but tonight these kids would sleep with full stomachs. That math worked for him. The woman approached as he was cleaning up, her boots clicking against the metal deck plating with a rhythm that spoke of military precision. Assel glanced up and froze. She was Valorian. That much was obvious from the iridescent scales and the multiple eyes. But unlike the refugees, her scales shimmered with health and power. She wore civilian clothes, but they couldn't hide the bearing of someone who commanded galaxies. "Those were my children you fed," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that human ears could barely process. Assel's mind raced. He looked back at the 2 young Valorians, now sleeping contentedly in the corner of the refugee area. I didn't know they belonged to anyone. They were listed as orphans. They are not orphans." Her middle eyes narrowed. "They are heirs." The temperature seemed to drop. Assel recognized her now, or rather recognized the insignia barely visible on her collar. The triple-star configuration of the Valorian Empress. His brain short-circuited. Melissa Sarnthrak, the Eternal Flame, commander of 14 fleets. The woman who'd ended the sector wars by literally redirecting an asteroid belt into the enemy's home system. The most powerful being in known space was standing in his food service station, and he'd been illegally feeding her children. "I can explain," Assel started. "Explain how you violated corporate policy to feed refugee children?" Melissa's laugh was like crystal chimes. "How you depleted your station's resources to ensure alien younglings didn't starve." She stepped closer. "How you showed more humanity than most of the civilized galaxy." Assel swallowed hard. They were hungry. "Ma'am, your Imperial Majesty?" "Melissa is fine." She moved past him to her sleeping children, running a claw gently across their scales. "I placed them here as a test. The galaxy thinks itself evolved, beyond the prejudices of the old times. I wanted to see the truth." "A test?" Assel felt anger spark through his fear. "You let your own children go hungry as an experiment?" Her eyes, all 6 of them, fixed on him with an intensity that could melt hull plating. Lesser beings would have cowered. Assel had seen too much death to bow easily. "I knew they wouldn't starve," Melissa said softly. "Because in every station, every colony, every corner of this galaxy, there are people like you. Humans mostly, but not always. People who see a child and think only they need help, not what species are they or what's the profit margin." She pulled a data chip from her pocket and pressed it into Assel's palm. "This contains clearance codes for the Valorian Empire's humanitarian networks. Every refugee station, every relief center, every place where my people work to rebuild what war destroyed." Assel stared at the chip. "I don't understand." "You are being reassigned," Melissa said. "I need a director for my new cross-species relief initiative. Someone who understands that compassion isn't a line item on a budget report. Someone who would sacrifice their own security to feed hungry children. Her scales rippled with what might have been respect. Someone human in the best sense of that word. I'm just a food service worker who broke corporate policy. You're exactly what the galaxy needs. Melissa picked up her sleeping daughter, cradling the child against her armored shoulder. The salary is substantial. The work will be difficult. You'll coordinate relief efforts across 40 sectors and command resources that would make planetary governments jealous. Assel looked at the data chip, then at the refugee children still sleeping in the corner, then back at the most powerful woman in the galaxy. When do I start? Melissa's smile could have lit the station. You already have.